Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I know it's not in our traditional sense, and I hate it as much as you do, but your girl is down for the count and out of the game for today. My surgery went well. Thank you for all the well wishes and everything the good vibes that you guys have been sending my way. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing started, and we're gonna start the same way as we normally do, with a little music to come in and feel the spirit of this room and just allow us to really come together, rock out, vibe out, and do this thing that we do each and every week. It's a reggae vibe today. Feeling it. Like I said, music moves my life. Like it puts me in such good spaces of mental processing and everything. The song that we're gonna listen to for a little bit right now is called Wasted Love and Wasted Energy, and it's by Alicia Keys. And I feel it's very fitting for the topic of our discussion tonight. So I'm gonna let it resonate and feel on in the room. To the way I feel. Come on in the room. Let the music draw you in. As we get into some things tonight. Wasted energy. Energy. I love this song. Energy. For a lot of us as moms, that's how things end up progressing for us. Basically, what she said, why did you have to up the energy? Hello, everyone. Welcome to our discussion tonight. I am the one and only, your favorite coach. Each and every week, I am Nicole Latrice. I am the founder of The Working Progress, which is this amazing community, this wonderful thing that I am so happy that each of you have decided to be a part of. The mission, the premise, the drive for The Working Progress is to work together to build strategy for a better you. We can all get better at some area, some facet, some aspect of our life. We don't have it all. If you say that you have it all, you can be buku rich, buku broke. You can have richness and love and, so much heartache. If you fit into any of these categories or any of the categories that you've even uncovered on your own, you don't have it all. There is something that can be better. For me, when I founded this, not only this community, my organization, my brand, my way of life, it was a necessity. I understand the value of being present and available, present and accounted for, of deciding how I wanted to show up, be a part of this world, and also the legacy that I am leaving now before my own eyes in doing this here for you guys in my private one-on-one coaching sessions, my group sessions, the courses that people take to maximize the vision of their futures. All of that is an extension of me, is an extension of the help and the guidance that I needed when I began my journey not that long. Well, it's been a while, but it still feels like it was just yesterday. So the conversation that we're going to have tonight, I am a woman. I am also a mother. If I am a mother, the only way I am a mother is because I have a child. My child has a father. We as women, there are times where we can't get past our own mess. And I hope that you all can be and are willing to be as honest and transparent as I am right now. especially when it comes to our children's fathers. For some people, it may be multiple children with the same father. For other people, it may be multiple fathers with multiple children. And whatever your situation looks like, sorry, I'm just turning on my do not disturb. Whatever your situation looks like, don't let it hinder you. Don't let it be something that serves to be at your detriment. What that means is no matter how you feel about your relationship, because to get to the point to where your parents, you have some form of a relationship with that other person. To engage in the act of Congress, you have some form of a relationship with that other person. And this is a woman to woman, mother to mother, genuine, like straight from my heart conversation. A lot of us, we tend to want to ignore that fact. Ignoring that fact, to me, is the equivalent of you being able to ignore your child. Can you ignore your child? Can you ignore the very presence of their being? No, because that's not generally what we do. We as mothers, we carry our children. We are the vessel and the womb in which their life continues to grow and continues to flourish. Like, one of my favorite things about motherhood is when I was pregnant. My child is the only one who knows the sound of my heartbeat from the inside out. Like, let that sit with you as a mother. Your child, your children are the only ones who have ever been blessed with that precious gift to know the sound of your heartbeat from the inside out. We as mothers, we give to our children, our significant others, and so many people, as I mentioned in our last session, from the outside in. It's like what we're able to do to feel like we're helping them, or to feel like we are propelling them to the level of excellence that we want them to achieve. That's an external source. We give. But when our child is in our womb, they're just being. They're able to take in all of our motherly goodness, free of everything outside. And sometimes for us as mothers, we fail to realize, or we fail to want to let the fathers be who they are. So that's the topic of our discussion tonight. To be or not to be. You have to let him or not let him be a father. You can't have both. I know in the last video when we were talking about motherhood versus self-care, I'm like, hey, why not? Why do you have to choose one or the other? This one is a little bit different. You are going to have to choose one or the other, because if you don't, you are doing a disservice not only to yourself, you are being unfair to the child and the child's father. I can only share my experiences with this very same topic. I told y'all before, I have gone through situations where I have driven myself crazy trying to stay invested, overly invested, I understand now, in other people's mess, as I like to call it. Because if it's not mine, then I just look at it kind of as it's mess. And that's that first filter of kind of disconnection that I needed to have, even as it pertains to the topic of our conversation. I was like, we did this together. We were in a relationship. Our relationship progressed so much to where, we did what grown folks do. And we ended up creating our wonderful, beautiful daughter. But it's just like there was a shift that had occurred within the dynamic of our relationship. And we as parents, we don't understand just how impactful those things can be. We roll with it. And it's just like, oh, well, or sometimes we generally accept it to say, that's normal. Everybody goes through that. Like, that's kind of what happens when you have kids. Your relationship is sacrificed to a certain extent. I do agree, but I agree to disagree. It's about what you want to let it do. So for me, once my child was born, it's just like, okay, well, we had this plan. We were trying to figure out, this is exactly what it's going to look like. I've never been in that situation before to have that actual plan with somebody. So it's just like, okay, well, the way that translated to me was, I got his back and he has my back when it comes to us being parents for this child that we have created. And somewhere along the way, communication became a huge issue at the same time, because it's like we knew what we wanted and we would talk about those things, but I don't think we allowed ourselves the space for change as it was coming. We were still trying to 100% stick to the plan. And I'm pretty sure that there are some of you out there who kind of have the same thing, to where it's just like, you create a plan, you feel like you have to 100% stick to the plan. There is no deviation, there is no plan B, there is no margin for error. It's just like, this is what we said, so this is what it's going to be. So for us, I was like, okay, well, we have this plan. This is how we're going to raise her. We both had similar experiences being children of divorce and, not necessarily having our having our fathers in the picture. Mothers was, our sense of strength, the first example that we saw of anything. That's the first point that I want to bring up. It's different for a male and a female. Like I said, me and my child's father, we grew up. Like, we were apart from each other. I lived in Tulsa when I was a kid and he was in Houston. But we had similar experiences as far as being raised by single mothers and seeing what those single mothers needed to do, or what they felt they had to do in order to provide for us and our siblings. So much so that it laid a foundation to where we were like, in sharing our stories and uncovering those similarities, it bonded us, because we got to a point to where it was just like, okay, well, we know on a basic level what we're not going to do, what we don't want to happen. It's that flight or fight response. When you're presented with something, you either fight or you're gonna flight. Me, I guess it was a little bit different, because I had the impact of seeing what it's like to be a strong woman. And for him, it may have resonated as seeing what a strong woman looks like. So a way to kind of break that down for your understanding is, I saw what I needed to be, and he saw what he needed to have in me as the child's mother. And so it put me in a space to be a little bit more intentional about exactly how I wanted these things to go. Give me just 1 second. My back is hurting. I need to get my pillow. Okay. Sorry about that. Ooh, that feels better. I should have done that before I started this video, but it's okay. Like I said, y'all are coming into my life and y'all see me for all my glory and the things that I forget sometimes. But back to the conversation, it put me in a space to where I was just like, I understood being that little girl whose father was not there. It took me a long time to understand the impact of how that all affected me, but it put it in me to where I wanted a specific version or a specific vision of what that should look like for my daughter that I have, because I didn't want her to go through the same thing ever. And again, that was our original plan, to not have our children be exposed to that. And I think in us, like, trying to honor that desire of not wanting our kids to go through the same thing, we didn't focus on what we actually needed to do, the actions that we actually needed to take together to be able to do that. So as her childhood progressed, it was just like it created a point of contention, a point of like real misunderstanding, if you will, because we had a plan, we talked about it, you said that it was okay, and that's what we can do. But now here it is, like our feet are to the fire, and you're not doing what you said you were going to do. For me, I didn't know what to do with that. It was just one of those things. It was just like, well, 1 + 1 is literally not equaling 2, and that other one, meaning him, I don't know how to get it through. All I know is I look at it as though, well, you're not being a father. Just because you went half on that baby, that doesn't automatically make you a father. And in me trying not to like live in that mindset, it was just like, okay, like whatever, we're in a relationship, maybe this is the type of stuff that comes within a relationship and newly having kids. Like, let me shift my focus. All right, now I'm like, I won't say disconnected, but I'm focused specifically on my child. And so it was just like he could start to see the shift in that dynamic, and it wasn't how he wanted it to be. So then it was communicated to me like, hey, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I know we as moms, like, that isn't the thing that we want to hear. We want our children's fathers to be able to like step up to the plate and want to find kind of their own way, because you kind of have to. You can't necessarily be solely dependent on one person, or just because the woman carried the children and it's expected based on society's standards, the ass backwards standards that they have, for the woman to take care of the house and the children. And sometimes it goes so far as to for the women to be barefoot and pregnant. Like all that stuff, that programming, it did us a disservice. Now, even though my generation, that's not how we feel. Like most people in my generation, we're looking for a partnership. But it's been instilled in us consciously and subconsciously that like kind of this is the way things happen, this is the way things are supposed to go. And again, it leaves us the inability to give that space and that margin of error to truly uncover what we need to uncover on our own. So I was struggling with letting him be a father as he saw fit. But I was feeling like he wasn't even trying. So we got to the point, as I mentioned, it was communicated to me, hey, let me know what to do and I'll do it. And I feel like it was because there was like, she was maybe like 3 at this point. So there was so much of her routine that I had kind of built because of the way that I felt. Like kind of being alone, if you will, like being the parent, as I mentioned, to be on her bumper, to be intentional about how she is raised, the things that she is exposed to, just giving her the best as I knew from the beginning. Because I don't remember, and most times, we have a certain point where we start to remember our childhood and the way we viewed our parents and our surroundings and circumstances and things of that nature. But I'm talking about from the time she was born, when you don't know or you can't remember any of those things. So, feeding schedules. I am a firm believer in breastfeeding if you can. I breastfed. We had a plan for that. It was just like, hey, like, since I'm breastfeeding, since I am the source of nutrients, and like, there were so many, it kills me. There were so many plans that were made prior to this. And sometimes in making plans, like, you're the one that has to understand when you have a role and when you don't have a role. But hindsight, what I know now is, even though I was the one that was breastfeeding, I was the source of life, I didn't have to hold that to myself. If I was able to breastfeed when she's sleeping, when I needed to get those excess pumps out, I could have been doing that to create bottles for him. So I can get to a point to where I'm like, okay, I'm hands off. Like, literally, you have everything that you should need. And if you don't, like, know what you need, then you have the majority of it and you should be able to come to me. But I'm still giving, in my mind, that would be me giving the opportunity for him to find his own way, which is all I've ever wanted. And so once you tell me, hey, tell me what to do and I'll do it. All right, well, maybe this is his way of trying. There are certain things that men don't understand about babies. Women don't understand everything about babies either, but we're the ones we're kind of in the trenches, if you will, going out and seeking out that information to make sure that we can get it done. And now keep in mind, this is another shared experience. This is like, it was my first child, not his first, but a shared experience in the means of which we were able to see what it's like to raise a child from in the womb through infancy and toddlerhood and all of that stuff. So it's just like, I don't know, I kind of leaned more into that experience, into that understanding, but I didn't necessarily articulate it. So in me not articulating it from the moment when I saw it pretty early on, I didn't help him to possibly have a better understanding of fatherhood. I didn't help him to have a better understanding of me and how I was feeling. And I had just as much of a responsibility in the disconnect in parenting as he did. And also, once it was communicated to me to tell him what I needed as it pertains to Layla, yeah, that's how it started out. But then it's like, for some reason, there was that innate inclination of, oh, well, this may also help him, like, kind of within our relationship as well. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're able to communicate about one aspect of your relationship that you feel needs improvement, and if it's something that's kind of a little bit outside the two of you all, because our children are a little bit outside of our personal relationship. There's a different type of love within my and his relationship compared to our relationship with our child. It goes deeper, and there are more adult feelings and emotions and stuff like that. So, that became life. And again, I did myself and him a disservice by not communicating 100%, like, the shift that made me feel, to where it was just like, well, damn. That almost came out. Well, dang. I have to tell you what to do as a father. And it was never, I thought it would be like a starting point. Like, okay, well, I'm going to tell him a couple things, and, somehow he'll get those things kind of on his own, and he'll make it repetition, and repetition turns into law. It turns into that thing it turns into second nature. And it's just like, okay, well, here it is. Like I'm saying the same thing. Nothing has changed. But I'm saying the same thing. Well, when are you gonna get it? Then I look at our relationship in that same light. I've been telling you the same thing, and here it is, you still don't get it. That's tough, y'all. I don't know if any of you all are out there experiencing the same, like, as that or something very similar. If you are, like, sit with it. Figure out what can and what needs to be changed, if anything. The more you resist, the more it persists. The more you don't dive deep and uncover those things that you don't like, those things that, like, may start out super small and you're just like brushing over, like, oh, it makes no difference here or there, and it doesn't really impact, like, you may think that it doesn't impact you now, but it will in the future. And it can also be that thing that helps y'all get to a better space. Communication gets us to a better space. There is no getting around that. Communication is like, it's like oxygen to water. If anybody knows what water is made out of, hopefully you do. If you don't, it's H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. You need it as a means to live life and to survive, to function, to be a living thing. You need oxygen. So we progress a little bit and things aren't changing, not only in my thought process, but things aren't changing as well in just how things are going, period. Like it's not getting no better. And here it is, I'm trying to understand, like, why it's not getting any better. Why aren't things changing? Like, why doesn't he get it? Why is it not so clear? There were times where in this struggle of to be or not to be, for me to either let him be the father that he was to his understanding at that point, or to just, make moves and do things that I felt that I needed to do for the sake of not only myself, but for her. It was a battle. It was a struggle. And it got so bad to the point to where us not seeing eye to eye on this whole parenting thing, it brought up a lot of resentment between the two of us. Because I remember there was a time, like, I don't like to argue in front of my child. I don't feel like that's something that they should see, and if they do see it, it should not be something that they see at a young age. So it's just like, I got to the point to where I was so annoyed, I was so drained, I was so just over him not understanding what I was trying to tell him as a parent, and then also, turning into our relationship, that I kind of withdrew. And it was one of the things where he would try to talk to me about it, but I had an immovable mindset on it. If you don't recall, I have a video for that. Go back and watch the video and you'll understand fully what I mean. Like, I couldn't, the light and the words, they weren't penetrating beyond the surface. So much so to where I can't even remember how it started, But I know I was in the closet. I was reorganizing some clothes, or I was trying to get something. And he came in there, and of course he wanted to talk about it, and I didn't want to talk about it. And it's just like, okay, well, all right, I'm already annoyed. So if this is what you want to do, then we just gonna do it. You gonna take it with the annoyance, with the festivity, with everything that goes into how I'm feeling, because you're opening this can of worms that I'm not trying to deal with anymore. And so we started talking first, and then came the yelling and the arguing, and it was so much so to where our daughter's room was across the hall from us. Now keep in mind, we're in the closet of our bedroom, but the main door is not closed. We kept our daughter's door cracked, just so we will be able to hear if she cried out for us or anything like that. And so our yelling became so significant to the point to where it was just like, she came in and she stood in between us. Like, she was grabbing my legs, but she stood in between us. And we kept arguing, even with her there. Like, the emotions were already super high. We had gone to like a point of no return. Now, there was never any like physical altercations or anything like that, because I do know in some situations words can be like weapons, and they can really hurt, and they can take people to some really like dark and bad places, and physical actions can ensue after that. We're not those types of people. But she was still standing there in between us, and it was just like, I had an outer body experience, so much to say. It was just like, this is not what's up. This is not anything that she needs to be in the middle of, in between. If any of you have ever had any situations like that, I hope you can understand like exactly what I mean. You can relate to it. Like, just think about like in a movie, no words, and I probably added to this video, but just seeing your parents, you're a little kid, you're looking up, you're holding on to your mom's legs, and your parents are just angry with each other. They're yelling at each other. You don't have a point of comprehension about what it is that they're yelling at, what got them to this point. All you know is you can identify it's not a good situation at such a young age. Once I came back into my body, I just told him like, hey, we can't do this. Like, she's standing right here in between us, and we're going at each other. I scooped her up, took her back to her room, consoled her, got her to go back to sleep. And from that moment, that was my catalyst to really sit and try to uncover, like, what is it about this situation? Is it just the fact that the plan didn't work out? Like, what true feelings do I have? Before I could even get to that point of uncovering those feelings, there was an even greater question that I had to ask myself before that. Nicole, are you willing to let him be a parent? Are you willing to take yourself out of their equation? The reason I say their equation is because you have two parents. You have a mother and you have a father. Whether you know one or you don't, you still have a separate relationship with each. Our children have a separate relationship with each of us. Mine has a relationship with me as her mother, and she has a separate relationship of her with her father. But for me at that time, I also didn't realize that I had issues with the fact that my father was not in my life and I didn't have the full understanding of why he wasn't in my life. I just know what I felt without him being there. Me coming to that actualization, it gave me a little bit more insight to say, well, Nicole, you may be projecting your adult feelings about your dad not being there at those moments, like at the same ages that Layla was. You're possibly projecting that into your situation now, which goes back to the question I had to ask myself. Was I willing, despite everything else, was I truly willing to let him be a father? Now, it would be different if he was on a different type of energy. It'd be different if he didn't want to be there. It'd be different if, there was infidelities. It would be different if he didn't make it clear that he wanted to be in her life, because he, like I mentioned earlier, he had shared with me prior to that his feelings about not being able to be in his previous child's life. I shared with him my experiences about the situationship that I was in, which produced my first child that ended up being a stillborn, and I posted, my story about that and the healing that I took from that in my video last week on Friday. So if you want to watch that, you're more than welcome to. So we again had shared our experiences and our stories, but it's just like that whole fight or flight situation, it kind of kicked in. I'm fighting for the thing that I didn't have at her age. I'm fighting for a better picture from the one I had built in my head. A better picture of, like, how do I really want this thing to be? And y'all have to forgive me if I start to get emotional, because it's still a part of the journey for me. I really had to get real with myself and uncover, like, am I the person that I'm really trying to tell him that I need him to be? I wasn't, but it was because we didn't have the same understanding about, just like, or not understanding, we didn't have the same values when it came to certain things. There was a way that he looked at life, and it was like on a very basic level. He was happy to be alive. He was happy for things to be progressing as they were. But me, I'm deeper than that. Like, I guess I'm like the type of person, I ask the why and the why. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had built this life, we had built this love, we had created this child. But at some point in our relationship, and at some point in the way I perceived him being a father, I felt left. I felt like we were running that race together. Everything prior to, we were running that race together. And somewhere along the way, I got left. I got left to hold the bag by myself, and it's just like, I'm crying out. I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to get you to understand. But there was a level of understanding that I didn't even have for myself to try to articulate that to somebody else. So here it is now, like, we have different views of what it means to be a parent, of how we should parent. But it's like, how do you find that balance despite everything else? The answer to that is you have to choose to. Yes, y'all may have ended up having that child together. And sometimes there are situations to where that's not the plan, that's not the intention, but anytime you engage in that act and don't fully think to protect your mind, to protect your body, and to just prevent those types of things happening to the best of your ability, a child can be the result, as well as so many other things, but we're talking about motherhood and parenting this time. You have to want to. You have to focus on what the picture needs to be for the child and not just yourself. You have to focus on what the picture needs to be for the child and not what you think about that other person. Co-parenting is a very effective tool if you let it be. Co-parenting is done within and outside of being in a relationship. Co-parenting is the type of thing to where it is two people. No matter the other circumstances, no matter, like I said, a relationship or no relationship, it is two people coming together. Co. That's what that root means. Co. The prefix, I'm sorry, that's what that means. Co. Parenting. Co-parenting, from my view right now, is just a means of communication. Like, until I can get to the point to where I have, forgiven my view of what I felt was his inability to be a father. Not to be a father, but to just show up in her life. I had to move past that first. And if your hang up is the way that you view that person, I implore you to move past it, because it's going to be so detrimental to your child in the future. It's going to handicap you from the ability to have a conversation with them that you may need to have a conversation about. Because sometimes there are people, like I've watched, true stories and movies, all that type of stuff, where it's just like some people had two parents in the household, but maybe the dad worked all the time and he wasn't in the house. That still creates something that child may have to deal with later in life. That still creates something that child may have to seek therapy for, seek a life coach to talk to have a hard conversation with you. I've had to have the very same conversations with my mother lately, and I'm 37 years old. Because as kids, we're taught you mind your own business. You stay in your lane. A child needs to be a child. But as parents, I feel like we're using that as an excuse not to have hard conversations with our children that we don't want to have with ourselves. I do make it a point to talk to my child from a level of understanding, so she doesn't feel that there isn't the love of the two of us. It just looks a little different. Daddy does this way. I do this way. But at the end of the day, we're still an effective partnership for the means of you, for you to have whatever you need to have. I'm the emotional person. So if you come to me and you talk to me about some stuff that's emotional, depending on what it is, I'm also going to have that conversation, and I'm going to relay it to your father so that he can be aware of maybe sometimes he may need to have these conversations with you. Like I was just saying earlier, like I really want this conversation of Black parenting to change. I want it to evolve. I want it to be something that's not as taboo, something that's not as hush-hush. Like the things that go on in home, I was raised that what happens in the house stays in the house. I agree to that to a varying point. What conversations are you actually having as the parent? in your house. Because I don't feel like some of you actually are, because I wasn't. If I wasn't, there has to be other people out there who are feeling and doing the exact same thing that I did. I don't want you to feel like you have to. I want to be able to present myself, flaws and all, misunderstandings, immovabilities, like all of that, so you can see firsthand. It's gotta stop. It ain't gonna get no better if it don't stop. Like, think about how you are now, the conversations that you're not having, the things that you don't want to address, those elephants that you know you got sitting over in that corner of the room that need to be addressed. Please don't be so oblivious that because of the fact that you're not addressing them, that your kids don't recognize them. That's like the person who's on the outside looking in. They understand so much more than we give them credit for. For me, that has been uncovered in several conversations with my child. She's asked me about stuff and I'm just like, where did that come from? We've never had a conversation like that before, but in her seeing what's around her and getting those stimulants, it produces curiosity. It produces her ability to see other things from a different perspective. Now, she may not fully have the cognitive understanding of the impact of those things, but not talking to her, even when she thinks about them, it produces that in her. It gives her a building block, if you will, to be like, okay, well, there are some things that just because I'm thinking about them, it's not mine. It's not my mess, so I shouldn't have to talk about it. It's not my mess, and I've been told to mind my business, so I'm not going to talk about it. We are all human at the end of the day. We all still have feelings, dependently and independently of our external factors and external people that are in our lives. Children are no different. Your child's father is no different. But as a mother, you have to stop operating from the standpoint of other people's limitations handicapping you. I want you all to be the type of women who can just go out and say what's on your mind. Like, if it don't rock with that other person, if it sparks a change, if it sparks contention, if it moves anything, don't feel like that happened because of the fact that you brought it up. It was already there. It just had the permission now, through your words and your actions, to come into the forefront, to have the light shined upon it. You can't blame yourself for how you feel about your child's father. What you can do is you can be honest about it. Like, in the space that I'm in now, I kind of had to disconnect myself from him as a person, mentally, as a means to disconnect the hands-on approach, the stronghold that I had on my view as him as a person. As a parent. Excuse me. That takes a lot of soul searching. But guess what? You know what they also call that? Grace. There ain't no other word for it. God gives it to us at every time. Grace to make our own decisions. Grace to sit in our own mess. Grace to explore this thing called life that he blessed us with. We're supposed to go out and do the same. We are supposed to extend that on to other people, because they're just like us. flawed, immature, irresponsible, selfish, selfless. Like, there are so many things that we look at ourselves as we are, especially when it comes to being moms. But we're not the end all be all. We are not all that there is. You would not be a mother without having your child's father. Learn to accept that. I know some people will be like, but we're not together anymore. Okay, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Y'all are not together anymore, but y'all were once together to produce your beautiful child. Let it stop there. It doesn't have to go any further. Don't let your mind continue to wander and take you in, and for some people, back into those negative spaces. You got to learn to process through it all. Like, that's where the name of my brand and my company came from, a work in progress. That's what we are. We are a work in progress. And like, looking back now, that was so prophetic to me, because I actually have a notebook that I started earlier part of college, and that's what I wrote on the front of the notebook, kind of as what the title of that was. It was a work in progress. And what it was my first means of like communicating my thoughts. I used to, it's been a long time since I've done it. I really would like, the spirit to move me to get back to it. But I used to write poetry, and that's what that notebook was, because that's how I viewed every single word that I wrote on that paper. Now, keep in mind, I said this was the earlier part of college, so I want to say it may have been like 2004, somewhere around that time. And here it is, I launched a brand last year called The Work in Progress. The foundation was laid so long ago. Everything that I had been through up until that point is putting me in a space to really self-actualize and just see how much grace am I extending, not only to myself, but those that are around me. And the relationship with my child's father was the biggest test of all of that. It was the first time that I had to really, really get the realest with myself that I could be. I wasn't allowing him that space. Back then, I didn't want to. No, I wasn't willing. But I saw where it got me. And now in the new space that I'm in, and in the desire to move forward in a good place, in a good space, I have to let him be what he's going to be. And anything that he may or may not end up being, that's not for me to say, that's not for me to determine, that's on my child. Because I saw what conclusions I jumped to, not having my father in my life. I'm not gonna let her do the same. You're gonna get the opportunity to see it. It may not always be rainbows, butterflies, and mermaids, because that's what she like. It may not be all good all the time, but this is something that I need you to be able to go through. Both of them. I can't shield either of them from that. What is to come will come. What will happen? Hey, if she needs me, if she feels any type of way, I'll be there to celebrate with her in her happiness as it pertains to how she sees her dad. I will be there with her in her sadness as it pertains to how she sees her dad. I will be there for any changes that come in the dynamic between her and her dad, because that I won't say it's expected, but sometimes it'll come. It could bring them closer. They can have moments where they get further apart. I had that with my mom. Kids have that with their parents at all times. But the difference for me is I want her to be able to have that experience with both of us. For her to be the best version of herself, I understand and I am willing to accept that she needs both of us. Now, the reason I chose to say it like that is because 9 times out of 10, like I said, it's either expected that the child, if two people are in a relationship so much to where they have a child together, their choices are not always together. Like sometimes, people can do what grown folks do, and one person be thinking one thing and the other person is just like, well, no, this is how I get a release. Like, this is just what I enjoy. Anything that comes of it, I'm not about that. As a parent, as a mom, as the person who makes the decision ultimately to continue on with that pregnancy and bring that child into life, into this world, it's up to you to decide what you need independently of that other person. Even if you're married and in a committed relationship and you have kids, the moment you decide to have kids, there is a part of that decision that is solely on you. Just so much so as it's a part of that decision that is solely on him. But y'all gotta be okay with that. You gotta find a way to make peace with that. Because if you can't, you cannot fully be there for your child as they need you to be, because you're stuck harboring these feelings of, oh, well, I didn't have a choice. But you did have a choice. Close your legs. Let's just be all the way honest. You don't want to have no kids, have him wear a condom. Like, whatever it looks like for you, let it be for you. Don't let it be according to society standards. Like, that's one of the main points that I want us as parents in this generation in 2021, which is when this video is being recorded. Let's do our own. I know some people say, well, won't that lead to a lot of confusion? No, it'll lead to a lot of dope conversations and a lot of dope opportunities for people to really see that it's okay not to have one track to do these things. It's okay not to have one way that these things have to happen. And in having forums and communities such as what we have here, it shines the light on that. Like I've talked about previously, like I was raised with spankings. And there was sometimes some talking, but depending on what you did, it wasn't no talking needed. Like, you should have known at that point. So I got my butt beat. Like, I got told up. And me going through those experiences, my child ain't 100% me. She has things that she's done, but she's at a time where I need to talk to her first so she can understand and see if she's able to change the narrative and change her behaviors. I want to give her that option. Now, there's levels to it. I'm not going to keep talking to you about the same thing over and over again. Excuse me. And I've even gone so far as to communicate that with her father as well. Hey, this is... Because it's about duality. It's about making sure that we're on the same page, because we're a team when it comes to taking care of her. So if there's a moment at school, or like, if he's at work and I'm on as a parent and I have to step in and do something to a certain way, hey, I'm gonna tell you about that. So if you see the same thing, it can kind of be handled accordingly. But if there's anything that you try that may be a little bit more effective, just come to me and talk to me about the same thing. I'm not so just, walled off to where it's my way or the highway. But if you put me in a position to where I have to be the person that's always on, I'm going to look at my way first and then expect you to follow suit. Until you tell me different, I'm not going to look forward to different. So that's why I say you got to do your own thing. You have to find out what works for you. But as a mom, Don't let the feelings of negativity that you're harboring, if you have any, for your child's father and for the demise of that relationship or who he was in that relationship, don't let that shape the way you look at him as a parent. And if you feel like you're not capable of fully doing that, call him to the carpet and say, hey, like, this is what I've seen when it comes to parenting. We need to figure this out. We need to try to have some better policies and structures in place so we're on the same page. What's up? Like, what ideas, what options are you trying to give to this thing? And then you see what he says, you see what he's able to do, and you navigate beyond that point. But again, that goes to, you have to find your own way, but let him be or not be a father. You don't have to control that. You don't have to remove the child for the sake of any of that not happening. Let it happen. It's gonna happen one way or another. And like I said about me, I didn't look at my mom any particular type of way, because that's all I knew. And I knew that my father wasn't in the household. I knew that the impact of it had to come from their relationship, but I didn't know all the ins and outs of all of that either. I was one by the time my parents got divorced. So not having a father around, that was just normal. But as I grew older and I started entering into my own situations and, exploring energy of the male sex and having a child of my own, wait a minute, I need more information. In order for me to be an effective parent to my child and to be an effective parent in with my child's father, I need some information. I need to know, like, where this started from. And as an adult now, you should be able to tell me that. I'm not asking for, I'm asking for the basics, because in the truth, there's three sides. There's one side, the other side, and then there's the actual truth. I say that because we're only able, in the beginning, we operate from our understanding, what we know, what we saw, what we felt, what we heard, what we thought we heard. It all starts with us, and it's the same for the other person. But being that close to it, you're not always able to see what it truly is. And that's that truth that a lot of us as moms don't allow the fathers to show, and we don't allow them the space to operate in their truths and try to come together beyond that with that understanding. The last thing I want to leave y'all with is, don't focus on the you and the me. As a mother, when it comes to looking at your child's father, look at it from the sake of the child. When that child looks at you guys, there is no you and me. There is no separation. Like, y'all are parents. There's still a sense of we and us for the means and the sake of the child. I just want to say, be sure to keep that in mind. And if you can't operate outside of your romantic limitations, if you can't turn that off to, like, really effectively, like, co-parent together in the same space, then just have conversations so y'all can co-parent apart from each other, meaning y'all are on the same page. Y'all feel the same way. There are some people out there who all they live by is spankings. There are some people out there who time out, talking to, taken away from. Like, there are all different types of ways to parent. As moms, we need to effectively give the fathers the space to do so. I hope you guys really enjoyed and could find parts of this conversation that you were able to connect with. Because if you can't tell, I'm all the way connected to it. I want better for us as Black parents. I want better for us as parents, period. I want my child whenever she has kids, I want her to be a more effective parent than I was. And I feel like I'm doing a good job of being her parent. I just want to make sure that I'm continuing to pass that along. I want to make sure, as I like to say, that I am always leading in love when it comes to her. If any of you would like to get a little bit more in touch with yourself and really uncover your effectiveness and your views as far as co-parenting, don't feel like that's a bad thing. Asking for help is not a bad thing. You can find my availability on mymentor.life/coach Nicole Wright. Again, that's mymentor.life/coach Nicole Wright. Co-parenting is a very big thing that I like to work with people on, because if you have children, the co-parenting never stops. Even when your children have children, or even if you look back to you being a child of someone else, the older you get, you're co-parenting with your parents. When you have kids, you're co-parenting your children. There are multiple ways to look at the same thing, and just because you're doing that, it doesn't make it wrong. But let's get together and make sure that you're doing it the way that works best for you. I look forward to seeing you all again, live and in person, live in the flesh, next week, hopefully. It depends on how these meds sit in my body and how I'm actually feeling. But if not, if it can be live, then most definitely I will come and I will record another session for you guys. So that way we can make sure that we're still staying connected and progressing this thing of motherhood further than anything we probably knew that we needed to. So until next time, I will see you all again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time right here in the community. I hope you all have a great evening. It's almost the weekend, almost time to celebrate. I will see y'all again soon.